Hello and welcome back, everybody, to Immigrations and Job Talk Show. I am Nipasa Pradhan, and we are very excited because we are going to speak about Program Electronic Review Management. That's right, PERM. So stay tuned to find out more. Today's episode is episode 3, and today we'll be speaking about firm labor certification with none other than attorney Prashant Dubey. So, without further ado, please help me welcome him back to the show.
Thank you,
Big hello
Napasa.
to you, attorney. Thank you so much for joining us back again.
Yep, no, thank you for having me for this iteration of the PERM process. Always excited to be a part of your guys' webinars. So thank you, Hire IT. Thank you, Napasa. Thank you to the team in the back that's making all this magic happen for hosting us today.
Thank you so much. And yes, so let's get an overview basically of PERM and why is it commonly known as that? And could you probably explain the PERM process, for employment-based green cards and its significance in the immigration landscape as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So if our viewers recall in last week's episode, we talked about the prevailing wage determination, right? And that can typically take, anywhere from 4 to 6 months to be issued. So once the prevailing wage is actually issued by the Department of Labor, what then happens is actually filling out a form, and it's called the ETA 9089. And basically, the idea behind the ETA 9089 is for the US-based employer to basically state to the Department of Labor that we have recruited for this position from within the US, and we can't find anyone with this specific set of skills or qualifications to do this specific job in this specific location, right? And so recruitment is extremely important because there are very specific things that an organization and a company needs to do. And I know we'll get into that a little bit later, but essentially the PERM labor certification process, the ETA 9089, is a way for the organization, the employer, to inform the Department of Labor that there's no one else out there that can do this job. And we are going to file this PERM labor certification on behalf of this employee for whom we've obtained a prevailing wage.
All right. So, folks out there, please watch episode number 1 on Immigration Talk Show. That's right. This is the channel, and you'll definitely learn more about EB3 and EB2. Well, moving on, Attorney Dubey, let's get to know more about the role of USDOL. How does the U.S. Department of Labor fit into PERM process, and what are its basic key responsibilities?
Yeah, so the Department of Labor, again, similar to what they were doing with the prevailing wage determination, they are going to validate and approve the ETA 9089. So end to end, the Department of Labor is responsible for issuing the prevailing wage determination, right? The PWD, as we talked about in last week's episode. So they're the ones that issue the determination on how much an individual should be paid for a specific role in a specific location for a specific set of skills, right? And then once recruitment is completed and the ETA 9089 is filled out and completed and submitted online in the iCert portal, they are also the ones that go on to approve the PERM labor certification. So they are extremely important to the PERM process.
Right. And talking about it, I think we would best get to know if what are the primary eligibility criteria, for the employees and employees under the PERM process for EB2 and EB3 categories.
Yeah, so EB2 is an employment-based second preference immigration category, right? Is what it's called. It's typically meant for foreign professionals with advanced degrees, or really its equivalent, right? And its equivalent can be master's degrees or higher, or 5 years of work experience plus a bachelor's degree, right? So that is the individual that would qualify within the EB2 category. For the EB3 third preference immigration category, That's meant for foreign professionals who have a bachelor's degree or individuals who are skilled workers, right? And workers are considered skilled if they have at least 2 years of work experience that is relevant to the job that's being offered. So there are various iterations, there are various nuances to that in different permutations that can play out. But at a very high level, for the EB2 and EB3, those are the qualification criteria. And the qualification criteria, really for any attorney that I've seen do the PERM labor certification process, we determine that at the very beginning of the process. So we touched upon that briefly last week, but we make sure that we know what the individual's qualifications are going to be for the EB2 or EB3, because we need to inform USCIS at the third stage, which I think is going to be a future episode that we do, in the I-140 process about, hey, whether this is going to be an EB2 or an EB3 individual, and we need to make that determination at the very onset of this process.
Right, right. And last week, when you were here for the second episode, we spoke about PWD. So maybe you could just briefly describe the concept of PWD and its importance in the PERM filing as well.
Yeah, so the PWD really is the first stage. So once we understand what qualifications an individual has, what skills they have, what is the employer actually going to be sponsoring them for, at what location, then what we complete is called a prevailing wage determination. And in that PWD, what we're asking the Department of Labor to do is to actually issue a wage for that specific skill, for that specific qualification, that specific job in that specific location for that specific company, right? So it's very, very granular. And what the Department of Labor does is they take all of that information, they measure it against their internal collective data that they have and say, hey, for this set of skills and job responsibilities, and based on this person's qualifications, this is the prevailing wage that you need to be paying them, right? So they essentially determine how much a sponsored employee is going to be paid at that prevailing wage. And that's important, right? Because it's meant to protect foreign professionals so that they don't get taken advantage of in a system that may be completely new and unknown to them. But it's also meant to protect domestic workers, right? So you have to show that this individual really is unique and that there's no one else out there that can do this job. So it really cuts both ways in terms of protecting domestic workers, protecting foreign professionals, and making sure that people are being paid a fair wage through this PWD process.
All right. And folks, definitely don't miss out on the second episode we had last week with Attorney Dubey. We spoke at length about PWD, the whole process, and everything. So, moving on, Attorney Prashant, let's get to know about the job description and requirements. How
Yeah.
specific does the job description and the requirements need to be in a PERM application?
Yeah. So I would say it needs to be extremely granular, right? So the reason why that is because when DOL is looking at a prevailing wage determination application or even a PERM labor certification application, they're trying to understand, not high level, what is this person going to do, but what are the actual specific skills? What are the specific tools? What are the specific programming languages that an individual needs in order to do this specific job, right? And if it is not granular, then typically what I see, at least at the PWD stage, is that there are chances of a request for information, an RFI that might be issued against the employer sponsor. And if it's not specific at the PERM stage, when you're filing the PERM labor certification application, that ETA 9089, then you increase your chances of an audit, right? And audits will further delay the process, right? PERM labor certification already takes anywhere from 8 to 12 months to get approved. So if you don't do, you don't summarize the job description in a way that's extremely granular and gets to those very specific details, then you increase your chances of facing an audit, which again will further delay the process. And if you can't survive the audit, then you do risk potentially your applications just getting denied at the Department of Labor stage, whether it's the PWD, whether it's the PERM.
Right. And talking about it, since the recruitment process is also very important. So if you could, elaborate more and tell us in detail, what does the recruitment process entail for a perm application? And basically, how does an employer demonstrate that there are no willing or qualified US workers for the job?
Yeah. So the recruitment phase of this process is, again, the US based employer basically telling the Department of Labor that, hey, look, we've done everything possible to recruit for this position from within the US, and we can't find
Mhm.
anyone with this specific skill set to actually execute this job, right? And recruitment is important because, again, there are things that the companies will need to do, right? So, for example, they need to place a job order with their state's workforce agency for 30 days. They need to
Mhm.
advertise in sites like Indeed.com. It can be on the company website. They need to advertise in local Sunday newspapers, the radio, or potentially recruitment events, right? So there are different places where this recruitment can take place and where it can be done. You only need to select three of those, right? So there are some that are mandatory, like the state workforce agency posting, but out of the previous ones that I just mentioned, whether it was on a site like Indeed, the company website, local Sunday newspapers, the radio, or recruitment events, you only need to pick three of those. You don't need to do all of them, right? And basically during that period, the employer needs to keep very meticulous records, right? And that's important because if somebody actually applies for that job, they maybe heard your radio ad, or maybe they saw your newspaper ad, or maybe they saw your job posting on Indeed, for example, or Monster.com, wherever it might be. If someone actually applies for it, you need to interview them. And if they have the qualifications, then you are obligated to also give them a fair chance of being hired if they meet those qualifications, right? So the recruitment's important because the at the perm labor certification stage, it's important to keep those records as it relates to who interviewed for the position, what were the qualifications, what were things that disqualified them, and why they aren't a good fit for the position. And then at the I-140 stage later on, you have to submit that paperwork, right? To prove that, hey, look, I've done the recruitment and I couldn't find anyone that's as qualified or has the same specific set of skills as the individual that I'm looking to sponsor. So recruitment is extremely important, and it requires really, really good record keeping, just so you make sure that, in case of a perm audit, for example, um, an example that I've seen is sometimes what will happen is, folks will try to recruit with very basic qualifications. And the Department of Labor will ask, okay, well, send me your perm audit file, right? Like send me all of the records you
Mhm.
kept. I can't imagine no one in the US, didn't apply for an IT help desk associate position, for example, right? Something that requires very basic qualifications that you can very easily recruit for within the US. And if they ask for that and you can't produce those records, then you're in a lot of trouble or you face rejection, right? And so that's why the recruitment phase is so important, as well as all of the associated paperwork for it.
That's right. That's right. And actually, Attorney Dubey, last time you explained this on our PWD session, right, on episode 2. So, but then if you actually could explain the two Sunday newspaper ads or state work agency and three additional steps and timelines as well.
Yeah. So typically the timelines associated. So, for example, once the prevailing wage determination is issued, you have 180 days within which you need to conduct that recruitment, right? So it starts with the state workforce agency where the job posting goes on for 30 days, right? And then it gets taken down. Same thing with the other recruitment, right? You need to post in a newspaper ad or a radio ad, or you need to keep it up on Indeed.com for a certain amount of time. Now, this entire recruitment period, end to end, takes about 60 days. And once it's done, you can then basically go into what's called a quiet period, right? So there's a 30-day quiet period. And in that quiet period, basically, if somebody applies for the position, you are obligated to recruit and conduct an interview and make it as fair as possible for that individual who's applying for the position. Once the 30-day quiet period is done and it's over with, after that, you can actually submit the ETA 9089, right, which is the PERM labor certification application. And that can take about 8 to 12 months to actually get approved. So there are very specific timelines and moving parts that are involved that an attorney and an employer will need to keep track of. But as long as everything is done, within the right timelines, you're able to put together a strong PERM labor certification application.
All right. Thank you for that, Attorney Dubey, for answering that question for us. And moving on, I think we should just take up more questions we have prepared. So the next one would be ETA 9089 PERM form. So if you could explain, as to who can file this form and also the details online and paper filing and the self-petitioning by the aspirants also, if possible.
Yeah. So it's the employer that is the sponsor for the PERM labor certification process. So whether it's the prevailing wage determination, whether it's the 9089 PERM application, it is the employer that is the sponsor, and they are going to be the ones that are filing the paperwork, right? Or the employer's attorney. And it'll be filed online. So the Department of Labor, for the prevailing wage determination, has a portal where you can submit it online. It's called a flag system. And for the PERM labor certification, it used to be the iCert system, but they are also moving to flag. And essentially, it can be filed online. No need to do it by paper because doing it online is so much easier, so much more straightforward of a process, and it's much more convenient to do it that way. Now, within the EB2 and EB3 categories, you cannot self-petition. You need an employer sponsor who's willing to go through this process, with the PWD, the PERM, the I-140 stage with you kind of in lockstep, right? It is possible to self-petition in the EB1A category, right? And that is likely a topic for a different webinar because that can take up an hour in and of itself. But in the EB2, EB3 PERM labor certification process, there is no self-petitioning that is possible. You need an employer sponsor.
All right. And if we have to, go do the tracking or find the receipt number, could you tell us details if the USDOL sends a receipt number or, filing the PERM even, and if there is any possibility to check case status online, for the beneficiaries as the USCIS online, the online case status system?
Yeah. So there's a couple things to that, right? You can check the general timelines that the Department of Labor posts online, right, on their website. So there's that, which will give you an indication of, hey, my PERM labor certification was filed in December 2023, and they're currently reviewing, June and July PERM labor certifications, right, that were submitted at that time. So I think that you can generally take a look at that. The second thing you can take a look at is you will get a case number, right? Or at least your attorney or your employer will get a case number. They do have a case status search mechanism. It doesn't really give you a whole lot of information, right? Other than saying it might be under review or, it's under audit or it's been approved, right? So like you get three kind of very generic case status updates. It's not going to tell you, hey, 30 days until you get a decision, something as specific as that, unfortunately. So there is a way, but it'll tell you as much as, the processing times will tell you on the Department of Labor website. So there's a way, but it's not very helpful, in my opinion.
Okay, you were saying audit files. So what are PERM audit files and why are they important? If you could elaborate more. And would that be like public access files like an H1B or E3, the LCA labor condition application?
Yeah, so they're very similar in nature, right? By virtue of, the H-1B process just kind of being a separate application petition and completely different than the PERM labor certification. there's different requirements, right? So for the perm labor certification, supporting documentation, is not really submitted to the Department of Labor, right? So like when you conduct recruitment, for example, and you put things in two Sunday newspaper ads, you're not submitting that specific document, to the Department of Labor, right? You're kind of informing the Department of Labor that, hey, I've done this, and that's about it, right? So instead, what you must do as an employer, you have to retain those required documents and produce them for the Department of Labor in the event that there is an audit, right? So the requirements for document retention, is extremely nuanced. And essentially, before you even get to a perm audit, you need to make sure you have this perm audit file prepared, right? And you have to keep it for at least 5 years. And that's something that employers tend to forget is that, hey, at any point, Department of Labor can come back and ask you for your perm audit file within 5 years of the perm labor certification process, right? Um, so typical things that are kept in the perm audit file are things like proof of existence of the company, right? Entity formation documents, financial audit documents, right? Do you have the ability to pay the wages for this person, for this worker? You'll have to keep the prevailing wage determination, proof of the recruitment that you've done, because again, when you submit the 9089, you're not submitting with it, the proof of the recruitment that you've completed, right? You're just letting them know the nature of the recruitment that you've done. It has to include documents about the sponsored employee, right? So that can be, their current immigration status, for example. It can be their resume, it can be their education documents, any prior experience that they have. So all of those documents need to be kept together in a perm audit file in case, your case does get audited. And you have to produce this for the Department of Labor. Again, it's kind of similar to the public access file that's required for I-129 petitions, where a company needs to keep the LCA, they need to keep a copy of the H-1B petition, documentation of the wage rate, any postings that they did as a part of the H-1B process, documentation of recruitment in case anyone did apply for those positions, payroll records, termination records, right? So from a record keeping perspective, the PAF and the perm audit file are very similar. But typically the documents that go into those records are very different in a lot of regards.
Right. And also, there are maybe many chances for denial as well. So maybe if you could tell us some common reasons, for the denial of perm applications.
Yeah, yeah. So I would say, a lot of times what I see is, let me take these off because they stopped working. But a lot of times what I see is, the reasons for a perm denial are often the same reasons for a perm audit, right? So proving that the recruitment was completed, and that was completed with all of the, different methods of doing it, right? Did you do the job posting on the state workforce agency? Was it on the SWA for 30 days, right? Did you execute the 30-day quiet period, or did you apply for the perm labor certification before that was up, right? Anytime that a job requires something less than a bachelor's degree, or anytime that a DOL officer might feel like, hey, the experience you're asking for this position isn't lining up because this position feels more entry level, but you want somebody with an MBA to do it, right? Like it's not making
Hmm.
sense. Um, Maybe an employer experienced layoffs in the last 6 months, right? If that's happened, and you're filing a perm labor certification, that can also trigger an audit, can also trigger a denial. So oftentimes what I see is the perm audit triggers tend to be the same for, why a perm ends up getting denied in the first place.
Right. And nowadays, everything is all based so much on technology and everything online, the internet. What if it breaks down? And what if it fails on you? What would you do?
Well, I'm hoping the flag system doesn't go down, right? Because that would be a problem. So as long as their portals are, still up and running, hopefully we'll continue filing PWDs and perm labor certifications. But you're right. Let's say the state workforce agency, website gets hacked or something, right? It's an outside chance. And you end up losing that, 30 days that you did that posting because they've lost data or they've lost information. I haven't seen it ever come to that, or I've never seen that happen, but the possibility exists, right? Like technology is vulnerable. It could happen. I haven't seen it happen, fortunately, so that's a good thing.
Yes, that is. But then your your earpods just failed just now also.
I need that was human error. I needed to charge them. Yeah, I should have charged them. Yeah,
Right.
that was human
Yeah,
error.
it's just anyway, let's move on and let's talk about, the processing times and backlogs also. What is the current processing time for perm applications, and how do backlogs, even affect it?
Yeah, yeah. So right now, I would say a perm application can take anywhere from 8 to 12 months to get approved, right?
Okay.
And in the past, that timeline used to maybe be 6 to 9 months. Um, I think, over the last several years, similar to the trend, that we talked about last week when it came to prevailing wage determinations, that they used to just take 3 months to get approved. And before then, it was just about a month, right? Or a month and a half. And recently, we've been seeing that I had an applicant whose PWD took about a year, to come back as issued, right? And we're beginning to see the same trends with the perm labor certification applications as well. 6 to 12 months is average, but if you do get audited, you can add another 4 to 6 months to that process, right? So it's really important to put together a strong perm application so that you can avoid some of those audit triggers. And the backlog really, it continues to grow. I've never seen that the backlog is trending in a downward direction, right? It just can, more and more individuals are tapping into the perm labor certification process because they really want to be able to establish their careers here in the United States. They want to be able to obtain their green cards, and this is the initial steps to get on that path. So I imagine that the processing backlogs will continue until there are some operational changes at the Department of Labor. Um, whether that's throwing, additional manpower at it, right? Or whether that is, streamlining some of the processes. And I know they're trying to do that now by moving from the iCert to the flag system, right? But I do see that the backlog continues to grow, and there are more and more delays. Where in the past, 6 to 9 months were average. Now it can take up to a year to get your perm approved.
Long time. I think all we've got to do is stay patient no matter what. It's going to happen, folks.
Yes.
So thank you so much, Attorney Prashant, today, for taking up so many of our questions. We have a lot more to talk about, to discuss, and to get to know more. And yes, friends out there, wherever you are watching or have joined us, whether it's LinkedIn, in Facebook, or in YouTube also, thank you so much, all you folks. And if you have any questions, don't forget to drop your questions in the comments. We will be updated and we'll be happy to take your questions at the end of our before the end of our show, of course. And if you have questions to the attorney directly, you could also mail him info@dubeylawoffice.com. You could also mail me as well, nipa@higheritpeople.com. And yes, stay tuned. We have so much to talk about. I also have a telephone number flashing on the screen, so check it out. Yes, stay tuned, folks. Let's go for a short break now.
You an IT consultant seeking a new opportunity? We offer job placement services for US citizens, green cards, EADs, and visa holders. We also sponsor various work visas like H1B, E3, TN, and green cards. 20 plus years of experience in the industry, exceptional employee benefits, highly rated by our employees, global presence with 200 plus recruiters and direct clients. Connect with us. Call us on the number 833-412-8472 or mail us at support@higheritpeople.com or visit our website www.higheritpeople.com.
Welcome back, folks, to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. And today we have Attorney Prashant Dubey with us. We're speaking about PERM labor certification, the GC process. We have been speaking a lot about so many things, and definitely don't forget to check out, the previous episodes as well we've had with Attorney Prashant Dubey. So, yes, since we know you are an immigration attorney as well, Attorney Prashant. So, tell us how important is the role of an immigration attorney, especially while assisting the perm process, and when should an employer consider hiring one as well?
Yeah. No, I mean it's always an interesting question, right? Like, because you don't you don't want to make it seem like you can do it without you know, do it without an attorney. And some employers, they are savvy enough. They've maybe done it a number of times, or they have their own in-house immigration teams that handle this process. But the perm labor certification process is extremely complex, right? So last week we were talking about the prevailing wage determination and everything that goes into it, right? In getting a prevailing wage, making sure a job description is granular. Um, and the perm labor certification process, I think one of the complexities around it is all of the timelines involved, right? When to start recruitment. Do you start it prior to the PWD being issued, but then risk having to do recruitment again if the PWD does take about a year to get approved? Is your job posting or job postings on the right channels, in the right ways? Are the job descriptions descriptive enough in those postings? How long did you conduct the recruitment? Did you wait for the 30-day quiet period to expire before you submitted the 9089?
Mhm.
Did you submit experience letters at the I-140 stage, right? Or how are you informing USCIS that this individual actually has the experience and skill set you're claiming that they have, right? So I think all of that goes to having an expert that can guide you through those nuances and those different moving parts, right? Especially for employers that might be doing this brand new. There are a lot of agencies, organizations out there that have never done a perm labor before. And so having that expert guidance, whether it's me, whether it's another immigration attorney, just make sure you do have a set of eyes on it, because I think that guidance, that experience, those examples that they're able to kind of speak from and kind of shape your process as an employer is extremely important. I think another aspect of it is just the form preparation, right? There are very specific questions on these forms, whether it's the 9141 PWD, 9089 PERM. There are very specific ways you need to answer those questions, or specific information you need to put in there, right? So taking away that headache and having an attorney do all of the form preparation can really save you some time. Putting together a perm audit file, right? Some employers don't know that they need to maintain these records for 5 years. Great, I need to maintain them, but what do I need to maintain, right? And how do I maintain it? So that's always important, is making sure the supporting documentation is put together nicely, and is also maintained in that perm audit file, just in case DOL ever triggers you for an audit, or comes asking for it within the following 5 years. Um, I think
Mhm.
another aspect of it is, if you do get triggered for an audit, Being able to have an attorney that communicates with the Department of Labor and can speak their language and knows what the officer wants, and how to talk to them, and to be that liaison, right? I think is extremely important to be able to monitor and follow up on a case or on an audit. And so I think there's a number of reasons why an immigration attorney is important as a part of this process. But I think the guidance more than anything is probably my number one reason.
For sure, definitely. Immigration attorneys are very important, friends, and definitely you should also think about hiring one and appropriately when would you need one. And talking about it, Attorney Prashant, you are also one of the best attorneys of 2023. Tell us about it.
Cool. Someone went on my website. All right, very cool. Or read my signature line. Yeah, 2023 was a great year, right? For our law practice. So Silicon India nominated us as a top 10 immigration law firm for 2023. I was selected as a lawyer of distinction as well. So, you know, over the last several years, and the last 5 years or so that I've been practicing, I think one of the reasons why I was able to accomplish that is really because of my clients, right? I have the most amazing clients who love to provide me good reviews, who enjoy working with me and that I enjoy working with. And through them, I've been able to grow my practice, learn about different areas of immigration, whether it's employment based, family based, or federal immigration litigation, which was a lot of what we did over the last several years. But it's really a testament to my clients and the work that they trust me with, and so I'm thankful for that.
So nice. Congratulations and keep up the great work. Keep inspiring us always, Attorney Prashant.
Sure, thank you.
Moving on. So let's get to know about the impact of an employee's immigration status. How does the current immigration status of the employee affect the PERM process?
Yeah. So it's interesting, right? Because you don't really need an immigration status to even be sponsored for a perm, right? If there's someone out in India or the UAE or some other part of the world that you feel like you want to sponsor, an employer can absolutely do that, right? So they don't need to wait for someone to come into the US on an H-1B or an L-1A or an E3 visa or a TN visa to initiate this perm labor certification process. You can absolutely do that even when someone's abroad, right? So it's an excellent question. But my response to it is it really doesn't matter, right? Because you can be from anywhere in the world, you can be located anywhere in the world, and if you have an employer that you've worked with or that's willing to sponsor you, they can even sponsor you while you're abroad. They can sponsor you while you're on H-1B here, on L-1 here, E3, right? Any number of visa categories that allow one to be sponsored for these employment-based categories.
Awesome. Awesome. So next on is about the amendments and errors. If there is an error in a perm application, can it be amended, or does a new application, it has to be filed all over again right from the beginning?
Yeah, so once it's filed with DOL, the perm application is considered final, right? It's like a nail in the coffin for your process. So they do not accept requests to change or amend a filed perm, right? Even to make a correction. Like if
Okay.
you've made a mistake, that's it. Any change to the terms of the job, therefore it could like really invalidate a certified perm. So you have to be very careful when submitting it to make
Very
sure,
careful.
yeah, that what you're submitting is has been reviewed like 10 different times by your attorney. It includes the same job description and skill set that was in the PWD. That needs to be consistent across with the perm, and then in the future at the I-140 stage as well. So one just needs to be extremely careful and diligent about it. But unless I've seen a PWD where an officer issued an RFI, right, a request for information.
Mhm.
Um, and in that RFI, they ask for additional details, right? Typically, they say, "Hey,
Okay.
can you get a little bit more granular with these job details and job descriptions?" And they will unilaterally amend the PWD on your behalf, but you have to give them consent to do that. It's not something you can reach into the application and do on your own. So something to be, very watchful of, because once the perm is filed, it cannot be corrected or amended.
Crazy, crazy. So, folks out there, when you are filing your perm, you know, the whole head has to be in it, 100% attention. You cannot be thinking about relationships, nor
No.
Christmas, nor the New Year party, nothing. Okay,
Yep.
nothing is going to work. So, 100% attention to this one at least. Moving on.
Definitely.
So, layoffs and perm filling, how do company layoffs affect the perm filling and the approvals also?
Yeah, yeah. So, we saw a lot of this over, this last year, especially early on in 2023 in the tech sector, right? You had different tech giants, Google, Meta, Amazon, going through rounds and rounds of layoffs, right? And that really halted their perm labor certification process, because if there has been a layoff at an employer, and you are sponsoring somebody's perm labor certification within 6 months of that layoff happening, then everyone that you laid off with those specific skills or that fit those job responsibilities, they need to be notified that you are recruiting for this position that you just had layoffs for, right? And so that is a very large undertaking, right? Can you imagine laying off thousands of employees, and then having to notify each one that, hey, look, I'm, now recruiting for a software engineer. Would you be interested in applying, right? So a lot of companies, what happens is, if they go through a mass layoff for 6 months, they don't file perm labor certifications, and they completely stop those processes. Now, I think smaller organizations, smaller companies, that are not tech giants, if you did experience a layoff and there's only, maybe one or two people you laid off, that sort of thing, it might be a little bit more of a manageable undertaking for you. But again, you kind of undercut yourself, because on one hand, you're saying, hey, I've got this employee I can sponsor. And on the other hand, you're saying, I just laid off, people with the same skill set. Right. So that
Mhm.
also becomes one of those like perm audit triggers, right? Where a DOL is going to potentially come back and ask you, like, those guys you laid off, why don't they qualify? Right? Like, why aren't they good enough for this position now? So you want to be very careful as an employer, that if you have gone through a round of layoffs, and this is why most employers, if that happens to them, they do kind of go off on this cooling period of 6 months where they don't file perm labor certifications.
Mhm. Okay. So, all right, I can see a lot of people out there are wishing Merry Christmas on chat. So, wherever you are watching us from, Merry Christmas to each one of you, from Attorney Prashant as well. Attorney, if you have anything to say to folks out there watching us, wishing Merry Christmas to both of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope the holidays are festive, and I hope they're restful, and I hope everyone gets to spend it with their loved ones, right? Because like, this is really the time of the year where things can wind down. You can kind of soak in and just marinate for a little bit. I know I'm looking forward to doing that, so I hope all of our viewers have the opportunity to relax and just spend time with family. I know it's big on travel season, so everyone stay safe, stay healthy, and have a great holiday.
Absolutely. Happy holidays, everyone. And thank you so much for sending us these warm wishes. Keep sending them to us. And yeah, let's move on with our show with Attorney Prashant Dubey. Let's speaking about perm labor certification, the GC process. Let's get to know a little bit about the appealing of a denial. If a perm application is denied, what
Yeah.
are the options for appealing the decision?
Yes. So there are a couple of different options, right? So one is you have 30 days. So let's say you file a perm labor certification and the decision comes back that they are not going to issue it, right? So once a perm denial notice is issued by the DOL, you have 30 days to either request reconsideration of that decision from the officer itself, or you can request review by the Board of Labor Certification Appeals. They are called BALCA, right? So if you don't request either option within 30 days, the decision becomes final, and you really have no other opportunity to challenge it, right? So again, another timeline in this process that needs to be, employers need to be mindful of is that if within 30 days you don't request a re-review almost from the certifying officer, or you don't appeal to BALCA, you do lose the opportunity to challenge that decision, right? And so again, an employer has two options. One is to either ask the certifying officer to reconsider their decision, or they can go straight to the appeals board that the DOL has. Now, I will say this: very rarely does BALCA or a certifying officer ever change their decision, right? Like unless there's a clear error, right? Like you clearly misread something, you overlooked something, or your reason for denial makes no sense, right? I would say 90% of the time, whether you go back to the certifying officer, whether you go to BALCA, whichever route you take, 90% of the time, they stick with their decision unless there's some sort of clear error on their part, or clear misunderstanding on their part.
All right, all right. And surely there's so much under perm, and we have the I-140 petition as well. It is definitely something we are going to talk about in the next episode. But if you could just briefly summarize, Attorney
Sure.
Prashant, it would be great. After a successful perm approval, what are the next steps, specifically regarding the I-140 petition?
Yeah. So once your perm is approved, right? And again, another important piece of this perm process is that once you file your perm, that is your priority date, right? So that is your line, your number in the queue, in the line for your green card. So once your perm application gets approved, the next steps is that within 180 days, another timeline to keep in mind, within 180 days, you have to file your I-140 petition, right? So this typically
Mhm.
involves collecting documentation from the employer, right? That documentation can be entity formation documents, it can be financial audits, it can be tax returns, basically anything saying that, hey, yes, we are a real company, FEIN numbers, that sort of thing, and that we have the ability to pay the wages that we're, sponsoring this employee for. In addition to that, from the employee that's being sponsored, you need employment verification or experience letters, right? So, in addition to just their immigration paperwork, right? Copy of passport, let's say copy of birth certificate, even, which dependents are going to be applying for them, what is their status, what is their I-94 records, that sort of thing. The really important piece is showing to USCIS at the I-140 stage, how do you qualify for an EB2 or an EB3? What experience do
Mhm.
you have that qualifies you for this job, right? And that's typically done through experience letters. That's typically done through speaking through your coursework. So perhaps you've done a master's degree in something, right? You've learned these
Yeah.
skills, you've learned these tools, you've learned these programming languages, for example, by way of your coursework. And we need to present all of that information to USCIS so that they can kind of look at it and say, yeah, I see. It lines up, right? They've got the education, they've got the experience. It all lines up with the skill sets that are being sought after in this perm labor certification, right? So the I-140 is great because you have the option to shorten the timeline. It can be done in premium processing. You pay a fee for that of $2,500, but you do get a decision within 15 days, right? So there's not a
Mhm.
whole lot of waiting at the I-140 stage. So there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel there.
All right. So I guess we'll have to, how to say, see to all the probabilities every time and play safe basically and play by the rules. When you play by the rules, you're just playing safe, right,
Yeah.
Atodi?
Pretty much, right? And I mean, there's so many pieces of this process, whether it's the PWD, PERM, or the I-140, that can trip people up, right? And I have had clients in the past that will come to me and they'll say, "Hey, you know, we tried to get my PERM labor certification 2 different times, and one time someone applied for the job, or another time." It just got outright rejected. And, when you kind of dig into the details, you sometimes find that, maybe the job description was very basic, right? Or maybe the
Mhm.
way they did their recruitment really, was stacked up against the employee. And so there's different considerations in putting together this process, that lasts almost 12 to 18 months, right? And being conservative, playing it safe, or just playing it honest, right? You want to be honest with the employer and the employee. I know how important it is for people to get their green card. And sometimes I'll have clients fight me on EB2 versus EB3. And I'm like, hey, I don't see it for EB2. You can do this for a year in EB2, but at the USCIS phase, and the I-140 stage, when they make a determination, if you don't qualify, like, you just lost a year's worth of work, right? So I think, being conservative in the approach, but also being honest, is always important, to make sure that people have the right expectations, but also then a successful, PERM certification process.
Right, right. Well, I'm sure folks out there have a lot of questions, and if you have any questions directly to the attorney, please don't forget to mail him info@dubeylawoffice.com. And you could also mail me as well. It'll be very nice to have your mails, nipa@higheritpeople.com. I also have a phone number, by the way, friends. So 408-335-6444. I'll be very happy to connect with you. And today we are speaking with Attorney Prashant Dubey on PERM labor certification, the GC process, and it is the third episode with him. We are going to speak a little more with him, but let's just take a short break now. There's so much to grasp and learn. Don't go anywhere.
Are you an IT consultant seeking a new opportunity? We offer job placement services for US citizens, green cards, EADs, and visa holders. We also sponsor various work visas like H1B, E3, TN, and green cards. 20 plus years of experience in the industry, exceptional employee benefits, highly rated by our employees, global presence with 200 plus recruiters and direct clients. Connect with us. Call us on the number 833-412-8472 or mail us at support@higheritpeople.com or visit our website www.higheritpeople.com.
Welcome back, all you folks, to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show with me, Nipasa Pradhan. And today we have Attorney Prashant Dubey on this third episode. We are speaking today about PERM labor certification, the GC process, and have spoken a lot actually. And many topics also are connecting to our previous episodes. So definitely check them out. You'll get to know more about the visas, the PERM process, and of course, today, let's well, I think we will end soon, but you know what, friends out there, wherever you're watching us from, I have a couple of gifts as well. So if you could just tell us where you're watching us from, and even if you have questions, we'll really be very happy to share some very exciting gifts with you. We have backpacks, t-shirts, we have cables, we have uh, yeah, see, we have wireless chargers, power banks. So just mail me at nipa@higheritpeople.com. I'll be very happy to receive them. So when you mail me or write to me, Don't forget to tell us where you're from and maybe your full address as well that you're expecting a gift. We'll be happy to send you. And my phone number where you can even WhatsApp or call me is 408-335-6444. Well, Attorney Prashant, it was really a fun chat and very enlightening, I would say, because we spoke a lot today. So thank you so much for taking up so many questions today.
Of course. Thank you again for hosting me. I always enjoy these webinars. It's always a good time. So I really appreciate you guys, supporting me through these sessions.
Right. And we have so many questions also, and we'll probably need more clarity, from the attorney himself. So we'll try to reply to them, to each one of your messages, and we'll be happy to take them. I also have so many questions also to Attorney Prashant Dubey, and I'm already looking forward for the next episode I'm going to have with him because I had more questions, but, we are already almost an hour today. So I think we're just going to keep it at this because we've learned so much and there's just so much to, learn more. So, Attorney Prashant, thank you so much once again. And if people want to connect with you, where can they connect with you?
Yep. So folks, you can always go to my website, www.dubeylawoffice.com, or you can shoot me an email, and that is info, that's info at dubeylawoffice.com.
Awesome. And, if you also need a project placement, we do that. So give us a call at 833-412-8472 or mail us at support@higheritpeople.com or visit our website, www.higheritpeople.com. We also sponsor H-1B visas and H-1B visa transport. So we'll really be very happy to connect with each one of you. And of course, thank you so much, all of you, for joining us today, wherever you joined this live session from LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, or wherever you are cozied up in your homes in any corner of the globe. So here's wishing each one of you a Merry Christmas ahead. It's the Christmas weekend, so get warm, cozy, and those fuzzy warm feelings with your loved ones, I would say. So keep enjoying the season. I'd say love is all, so keep loving, and thank you so much for joining us. Stay tuned to Immigrations and Jobs Talk Show. Subscribe to our channel. It's Nipa saying bye-bye for now. And yes, stay tuned for more. Just keep watching our channel. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Are you an IT consultant seeking a new opportunity? We offer job placement services for US citizens, green cards, EADs, and visa holders. We also sponsor various work visas like H-1B, E3, TN, and green cards. 20 plus years of experience in the industry. Exceptional employee benefits. Highly rated by our employees. Global presence with 200 plus recruiters and direct clients. Connect with us. Call us on the number 833-412-8472 or mail us at support@higheritpeople.com or visit our website www.higheritpeople.com.